Have you ever just stopped and thought about the absolute magic that's packed into that slab of glass in your pocket? I mean, we tap and swipe on it hundreds of times a day without even thinking. Well, today we're going to change that. We are peeling back the layers on one of the most revolutionary pieces of tech in human history.
And come on, let's be honest. This quote probably rings a little too true for most of us, right? Our phones have basically become an extension of our own bodies. They're our map, our camera, our entire connection to the world. It's kind of hard to even imagine life without them.
So, what is it? What is the secret sauce that turned a simple telephone into everything? Turns out it's not one single invention, but an incredible fusion of 3 different technologies, all hiding in plain sight.
Now, here's the thing that might surprise you. The core technologies in your phone, the toughened glass, the touch sensors, the color displays, none of that was actually brand new when the first iPhone launched. The real genius, the true innovation, was figuring out how to combine them, to layer them so perfectly that they feel like one single magical surface.
So let's do that. Let's start peeling this technological onion, and we'll start with the part we all know and touch every single day, sometimes a little too forcefully. The glass. This is our first line of defense, the unbreakable shield.
If you remember phones before 2007, you remember they mostly had plastic screens. And yeah, they didn't shatter, but man, they would get so scratched up just from being in your pocket with your keys. Today's standard, this toughened glass, is over 5 times stronger and incredibly scratch-resistant. And that was a huge deal, not just for durability, but because glass just feels better and makes everything look so much clearer. So, how do they make it so tough?
Well, it's all thanks to this really cool chemical process called ion exchange. They take a sheet of special glass and soak it in this super hot bath of molten potassium salt. And while it's in there, the smaller sodium atoms that are already in the glass actually leave, and they get replaced by these much, much larger potassium atoms that squeeze their way in. Okay, here's a fantastic way to picture this. Think of normal glass like having 3 average-sized people in the back seat of a car. They fit, but you can still kind of push them around. But this toughened glass, it's like cramming 3 massive football linebackers into that very same back seat. They are jammed in there so tight, creating this immense pressure. And that is why it takes so much more force to break that surface.
All right, so the glass is super tough. Got it. But how does a plain old piece of glass actually know you're touching it? For that, we have to go one layer deeper, to the invisible electric grid.
This right here is the heart of the touch in touchscreen. Just underneath the glass is something called a projected capacitive sensor. It's this incredibly fine grid made of a special transparent conductor. And the wild part is, this whole complex pattern of rows and columns is completely invisible to the human eye.
So here's how it all comes together. Those 2 layers of the grid, the rows and the columns, they create a stable, constant electric field between them. I want you to picture a perfectly calm, flat electronic lake that's covering the entire surface of your screen.
Now, you might not think of yourself as an electrical device, but your body is naturally conductive. So when your finger gets close to the screen, it's like dipping your toe into that calm electronic lake. It causes a ripple. It disrupts that electric field at that one specific point.
Meanwhile, your phone's processor is constantly watching this whole grid. And when it sees that ripple, that change in the electrical charge, it can pinpoint its exact location by just checking which row and which column are crossing at that point of disruption.
And boom, just like that, a touch is registered. This whole scanning process happens so ridiculously fast that the processor can track dozens of these little disruptions at the exact same time. And that is where we get multi-touch, the ability to pinch and zoom and swipe with all your fingers at once. And hey, you can prove this whole principle yourself. Seriously. Because the screen is just looking for something conductive, you can make your own stylus. Just get a pen, wrap some aluminum foil around the tip, and you're good to go. The foil is conductive, just like your finger, and it'll mess with that electric field in the exact same way. It's a super fun, simple experiment that shows the science behind the magic.
Okay, so we've got tough glass, and we've got an invisible touch grid. But what about the picture? Where do all those bright, vibrant colors actually come from? It's time to peel back our final layer and reveal the source. 10 million tiny lights.
Most new phones use a technology called OLED. That stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode. Now, the key difference from older screens is right there in the name, light emitting. See, older screens needed one big backlight shining through. But with OLED, every single tiny dot creates its very own light. This means if part of the screen is black, the lights in that spot just turn off. And that's how you get those incredible deep blacks and save a ton of battery. Now, to really understand the scale we're talking about, a typical high-end phone has about 3.3 million pixels packed into its display. That is an insane level of density. But believe it or not, it gets even more mind-boggling.
Because every single one of those 3.3 million pixels is actually made of 3 separate little lights, or subpixels, one red, one green, and one blue. So you're not holding 3.3 million lights, you're holding almost 10 million microscopic, individually controlled lights in the palm of your hand. It's incredible. So how does each little light work? Well, in a nutshell, a tiny transistor zaps some electricity through a special organic material. As the electricity flows through, that material glows, releasing light. The specific chemical compound they use determines if it's red, green, or blue, and the amount of electricity controls how bright it is. It's simple physics, really, just happening millions of times over, right on your screen.
So, there you have it. We've deconstructed the screen. Tough glass, an invisible touch grid, and a brilliant OLED display. But technology never ever stands still. Which leads to the big question, what comes after the touchscreen?
Well, if you look at the history of how we talk to computers, you can see a really clear pattern. Every step makes the technology feel more direct, more natural. We went from the keyboard and mouse to the whole finger-on-glass era we're in right now. The next logical step seems to be moving away from physical contact entirely towards our voice, gestures, and eventually, maybe our minds and the world around us.
And this future is already starting to happen. We're seeing touchless gestures in cars. We're seeing augmented reality that turns your whole living room into an interface. There's even wild research into haptic glass that can make a flat surface feel like real buttons. And then, of course, there's the Holy Grail, controlling technology directly with our thoughts.
And this all brings us to one last big idea to chew on. For decades, the screen has been the center of our digital universe. But if our hands, our voices, or even our thoughts become the main way we interact, what happens to the screen itself? Does it just vanish? Or does it morph into something we can't even imagine yet? It's a pretty exciting question to think about.